So this week I'm going to dive into the rear suspension on my 65 Cadillac Hearse. Now, several months ago I went ahead and converted the front to air ride suspension, and in the meantime I've just been using Schrader valves to add air and remove air depending on where I wanted the front suspension to ride at. But now that I'm going ahead and putting in the 530 cubic inch big block, I want to finish out the air ride suspension so I can have full suspension control in this vehicle. So the first big step to doing that is I have to take out all the rotten wood from the floorboards in the back of this hearse. Now, they were always sort of constructed with a combination of wood and sheet metal for the rear interior floorboards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of the wood that's in my way and take the fuel tank out of the vehicle and kind of get an idea of where everything's at so I can start to modify and fabricate. And then after I get all that stuff done, we'll talk about the equipment that's going in, and we're going to end up eventually with a triangulated 4-bar rear suspension system with 2 triple bellow heavy-duty airbags. So let's go ahead and dive into some time lapses of me taking apart the rear floor of this 65. Okay, let's check out all this work that we just got done on the rear suspension. So firstly, as you can see, I cleaned out all the old floorboard stuff that was in the way. There was quite a mess in here, a bunch of old interior and rat stuff all piled up in this section because this particular area here was boxed in with the flooring and you couldn't access it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add jump seats to the back of this vehicle so I can have more seating. So I went ahead and I cut out some of the structure in here to create space for those jump seats in an area that they would have been if it had them from the factory. And then you look in the back here and you can see all of the air suspension system completely installed. So we've got our bags, both sides, air lines, we've got all of our supports. You can see all the framework has been rebuilt. And let's go ahead and grab a light since it's kind of dark in here. That's better. So now you can see, so the original cross member that went through this whole area here, I cut all of that out after making this new cross member out of heavy wall tubing. And as you can see, that's also braced to the frame rail in a couple of triangulated brackets. And then we've got our heavy duty plate brackets for the top of our airbags. We've got the bracket that hangs off the bottom of the axle for the rear, for the lower mount of the airbag. And you can also see the shocks have been relocated. The floor has been cut and modified to fit all the suspension components. And then all the main structure has been rebuilt. And currently, in this position, the bags are inflated and the suspension is raised to its highest ride height, which brings it back to pretty close to, if not a little higher than what it was before. Now underneath, we can see all the work that got done on the air ride suspension. So we've got our triangulated bars on top, and then let's see here, the lower bar I'm pointing the flashlight at right there ties into the original leaf spring pocket and mount in the front there on both sides. And then you can see the shock is mounted behind the axle to a bracket that comes off the bottom of the spring perch from the axle. And we got plenty of clearance on all of our brake lines and our fuel line and the calipers, and pretty much everywhere underneath here has nice clearance to it. So with all that, you can kind of see how it sits with air in the suspension. So let's go ahead and look at what we've got here with air in the suspension. So that's back to pretty close to where we were before we started. The front's currently aired out. Let's go ahead and take a look at it with the rear aired out. Right now, since I don't have airbag control, it's currently controlled with Schrader valves. Just like the front. Let's see here. Watch as the suspension airs out.
As you can see, it's starting to come down. So now we're getting pretty close. We've still got a little bit of air left in the bags. While that's continuing to air out, let's talk about some other details that I went ahead and did. So since I've switched to the 530 cubic inch Cadillac big block, I decided I wanted to have a set of emblems to match. And I realized that you could take a 350 Chevy emblem and switch the numbers around and get 530. So that's exactly what I did. I cut these emblems up and I created myself a 530 emblem just for this vehicle. So I made one for this side and one for this side. Now it properly showcases its 530 cubic inch new designation. And you can see now too that the air has come out of the bags, and there she sits with the lower ride height. Nice and low, nice and level, front to rear. Now, I could have gone one step further with the suspension and C-notched the rear axle into the frame so that I had even a lower ride height than I currently do. But for me, it's more important that the vehicle remain drivable than it laying frame. So I made the choice not to C-notch it so that I can have drivability even with all four airbags aired out. And eventually I'm going to go ahead and change my tire size to increase the diameter 2 inches, which will increase the overall ride height by 1 inch. Again, improving my ground clearance when the bags are aired out. And this to me is very important because if I did have bag failure on one or multiple corners, I still want to be able to drive the vehicle. So there she is, all aired out with the new rear air suspension. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to show you one more thing. This is the rear suspension aired out with a look at it through the interior of the vehicle. So as you can see, we've got plenty of clearance on our brakes. And we have the rear axle resting on the bump stops. And the vehicle at this point still is drivable with the bags aired out. And you can see also here we have clearance on the driveline by about 3/8 of an inch, I'd say, all the way aired out, which is pretty cool. Now, I could have, again, C-notched in this region to allow the vehicle to sit down lower, but I decided not to do that because I want it to be drivable, and I also didn't want to change the floor height on the interior. If I'd have C-notched the frame so it could sit lower, then I'd have to change the interior floor height by quite a lot to get to that point. So I chose not to do that, and I went for drivability over being completely on the ground when aired out. But we got plenty of room on everything, plenty of clearance on all the brake lines, plenty of clearance on all the soft lines, and full travel of our upper and lower triangulated bars.
So that's going to do it for this week's video on the 65 Cadillac Hearse. I'm really excited about all the progress that I made on it in this particular run. Getting the rear suspension all set up, cutting out all of that old nasty flooring, getting rid of all the old rotten wood, and moving into this really nice new triangulated 4-bar airbag suspension system is a great step forward in this project. Now there's definitely still some work to do in the back of the vehicle. I have to go ahead and finish in the flooring and fill in all the gaps and the holes that were made by cutting out all of the old material. And then, of course, I have to finish out the air ride system with air tanks and air compressors, as well as a control valve system. Now, I don't have to do all of those things right away, and depending on how the other parts of the project go, I might wait a little bit on finishing out the air ride control. For now, I can do what I like with it with the Schrader valves that I have mounted underneath the dashboard. I can set it to a set pressure and drive it that way, or it can be driven without air in it for short distances. So now that all that's done, the next big thing is going to be finishing out the flooring and the remaining touches, and then I'll go ahead and move back to the engine so I can get that put together to install the fresh engine and get this thing running again. So again, really fun week. I was excited to get all of this stuff done, and I hope you enjoyed seeing all the process and the time lapses and so on and so forth. And I hope you have a good one, and we'll see you next time.